welcome, good afternoon, and let me invite my noble speakers. First, Mr. Bo Normark from InnoEnergy. Mr. Kurt Vandeputte from Umicore. And Mr. Wojciech Satora from Grupa Azoty. Okay. So, probably my speakers will do the best job when they introduce themselves, and especially gonna say some few words, what they're doing, what's their activity, what's their passion maybe. So please, Kurt, you can start.
Thank you for giving me this honor to start. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting us here on stage. So my name is Kurt Vandeputte. I'm a reskilled chemist. I'm 20 years within Umicore, and I'm currently heading our rechargeable battery materials division. I will stick to that for the beginning.
Okay.
So thank you. My name is Bo Normark. I am thematic leader for smart grid and storage in InnoEnergy. InnoEnergy is a European company. It's actually a public-private partnership with shares owned by the Commission and private companies. We have locations on 6 places in Europe, and each of us has, I would say, a thematic responsibility. So I share that one for thematic area for smart grid and storage. And I can come back on the storage area.
Okay. Hello, my name is Wojciech Satora. I represent Grupa Azoty, so the biggest chemical company concerned in Poland, and I work in R&D department, corporate department, and we are involved in many research works regarding the development of new components for batteries and energy storage area as well.
Okay, so we are here for talking about the energy storage. We just finished another very fruitful round table talking about batteries. I just bring some battery, actually the cell, because we need to distinguish if we're talking about cell or batteries, because they are completely different segments of the chain value. And but we discover there is still plenty of themes, the topics about how we need to create this whole value chains, what should be done, what should be regulated, how it should be financed. And even for today, that's a very important topic to talk, how we deal with that thing. And most importantly, maybe we can say now how it would develop and how it will look like in 10 years. So maybe you have some kind of vision how you understand the sustainability, the state of art for now about energy storage, and how it will look like in the next future, in short horizon, maybe in the longer perspective. So maybe
from our perspective, we see that we need to have many cooperation and to have many cooperation with university units. We have opened many acceleration programs, because we are monitoring the market, state of the art of technologies. We would like to find new solutions for specialized chemistry products, because we think without cooperation with scientists, we won't be able to have a position to achieve a position of supplier of that products.
Okay.
One of my jobs is quite challenging today and exciting, because I'm leading the EU Battery Alliance workstream for InnoEnergy. It's an initiative that was taken about a year ago. And if I take 2 years back in time, very few people believed in a battery industry in Europe. And at that time, we were asked by the Commission to take a look at that, and we clearly identified that if we want to compete in Europe, we can do it if we act along the value chain. And since then, a lot of things has happened, and today I am glad to see that a lot of people are not only believing in battery industry, they are also investing. So like Umicore, I guess, has some ideas on that, because you have started investing in Europe.
Yeah, EBA is a big topic, and even also I was last week in Frankfurt when we started to talk about the pilot lines with prototyping the cells, and there is still the problem how to define what is the prototyping line. Something else it's for big players, and something else it is for small companies, for small startups. So still this is something there's a lot to do in this area. But Umicore was actually asked for the questions how you see that.
Well, first of all, I think energy storage at this moment in time is the least known application for lithium-ion technology. We, of course, all know for our portable devices what a wonderful battery technology we currently have. That extended to automotive, and now automotive is really seen as becoming the huge future market. But if I look at the actual business level today, also for our company, energy storage is really underestimated. It's larger than we think. There's maybe less hype around it, and there's maybe less discussion around it. But the market perspective and the market prospects for energy storage are really big. I personally believe that by 2025, energy storage segment is probably going to overtake portables within lithium-ion technology. So let's not forget that one. We should not all aim at being a big supplier to the big car OEMs. There's going to be plenty of other market opportunities coming. And the big driver for that is, of course, electricity generation, which is being decentralized. I think probably all of us in the room here agree that that is the trend for the future. So decentralization of power generation. And that can only be efficiently used if we couple it with the suitable energy storage devices. So that's, for me, the main reason why I see energy storage as a very important future market.
Okay. Yes?
Yeah, let me add to this, because I'm a retrained transmission guy. I was working with transmission for 40 years. I know all about grids, and today I understand that a lot of if you want to solve the problems in the power system that we see in front of us, you cannot do that by just adding grids. It's far more efficient, in fact, to do it by putting in storage. Cheaper and more efficient system. And I would also add that on the industrial side, we talk about the transformation of the automotive industry. They will start building electric cars. But I don't think that people see also that other sectors are going to transform much, much faster. For instance, I have good friends that work in a company called Husqvarna. You know what they do? They will expect that in 5 years, they will completely transform to electric drives. Completely in 5 years. Same thing, other companies for instance, heavy machines in the construction sector and so forth. So I agree that the transition will be faster and more brutal than things people understand, that it goes beyond the automotive sector.
And yeah, would it be the lithium ion? Would it be something else in the future? Maybe hydrogen? I know you have some activity in hydrogen as a company.
Yes, exactly. We have some activities regarding the development the hydrogen technologies. As well, we are the biggest hydrogen producer in Poland, and our hydrogen meets the requirements for the automotive. So it requires the quality standards. So we see that hydrogen is another way for supplying, for example, cars. Also, we started our works regarding the new types of fuel cells for cars. So we see the potential in this area.
Okay, and will you see anything changes I'm not saying coming from the old carbon technologies to the clean technologies, but should some players or some areas of business will be disrupted by this new approach? So this old order toward the new order, especially from the business side. Do you see some possibilities to change the economical situation?
Well, I mean, one of course is the power sector. It's quite obvious because in the power sector, when you decentralize, of course, that the ownership itself of will change. More and more of the ownership will go into private hands and in industries. And one example that I also like to take, where it's also storage in a different dimension, is you ask about visions. I can see that in the future the heating system in Europe will be electrified, and then you will have heat pumps, you will have storage, and you will have heat storage, you will have hydrogen storage, and then the investments will basically be made by the end users, not by the big companies, and that's a big transition.
Actually, looking at my own private situation, I have solar panels on my roof, I have an energy storage pack in my garage, and I'm driving a plug-in car. So having that combination basically kind of disconnects me from the grid. I look at the metering system 2 weeks ago. I mean, this year I've not taken anything from the grid. Net, of course. Huh? In winter, it's a different situation than in summer. And I think this is the key challenge that we still have for energy storage going forward. I mean, the arbitrage day-night or even a couple of days, that's something we can handle. But the technology to handle inter-seasonal shifts, this is not available yet. And I'm not saying that lithium-ion technology will even ever be capable of doing that. But in terms of energy storage, I see that as one of the key challenges, technology challenges going forward.
Yes, that's also the problem, because as you're saying, you store more and more energy, you need to more and more energy storage systems. So we should also discuss probably the problem we should face in the near future, the lack of cells, lack of batteries, and especially it's the topic which is giving us the perspective, lack of substances, raw materials, components for the cells. So maybe some comments on that, if it's dangerous, if it's not, and maybe we should discover new kind of batteries. What's your opinion on that?
Maybe I can start with natural resources. So in order to produce a cathode material, you currently, for NMC type cathode materials, you need lithium, you need manganese, you need nickel, and you need cobalt, all in diverse ratios. Let's do a tour of the world to make sure that there is enough material. Lithium, there is plenty of. I mean, in worst case, we're going to extract lithium from the sea, but I've been with my own feet on the salars in South America, and I can testify, ladies and gentlemen, there is enough lithium in the world, believe me. Manganese, no worries about that. I mean, there are huge manganese reserves. It's used in stainless steels, many other applications. Battery market is for the manganese sector, just a drop in the ocean. Cobalt, that's another story. It's already briefly touched upon earlier today, I heard, in several sessions. We do not expect shortages on the long term in cobalt. I think there is more a geopolitical risk that it's unavoidable if you are in this business today, that somehow you are exposed to Central Africa. Mother Nature has been very generous with copper and cobalt in that part of the world. It's not the most stable area to source from, but at this moment in time, really mid-term, even longer term, I mean, it's a balance of using less cobalt in batteries. It's a clear trend, unavoidable, I would say, from cost and risk perspective, and the supply that is available not only in Central Africa, but in the rest, other parts of the world. So we see there, going forward, also no fundamental risk. Then the last one is nickel. Nickel is a vast market. It's one of the key components in stainless steel. Now, one of the key issues for nickel is, of course, that for battery business you need high-grade, chemical-grade nickel, which is something really different than what is being used in stainless steel. There is no lack of natural resources, but I mean, as the battery market is growing very fast right now, the next 5 to 7 years, it's going to be, for nickel, probably the most challenging element. So that's on the natural resources, and then maybe a last element that I would like to add to that. We are now talking about finding access to the virgin, fresh new material, but let's not forget that all these metals that I've explained, they are perfectly recyclable, so at a certain moment in time, you will get into a dynamic situation where you start to get an inflow from end-of-life batteries back into the supply chain. So longer term, a decade from now, 2 decades from now, of course, that situation is going to stabilize. But the first 10 years, we will have to fill the pipeline with the majority of virgin natural resources.
I may comment on that because I was actually born on top of a copper mine. And people don't understand what is a mine. That is something that is worth digging up on the ground. So with current cobalt prices that we have today, is a lot of cobalt mines that were not cobalt mines a few years ago. So if we are looking for sustainable cobalt mining, you have a lot of resources that can be tapped. I do also agree that on the technological front, there is already a strong drive to use less cobalt. And I think we will see other changes also if you look long term, because people talk, if we go beyond 10 years, 15 years down the road, then there are more spectacular battery chemistries that could develop. So we use less materials. But I share the view that, and I'm not an expert, but I'm listening to many experts, that we will not have a shortage of material. But of course, short term, there can be bottlenecks. But on the technological front, I tend to believe also that if you look, there are so many, we could ask the scientists, there are so many different ideas how you can develop these super fantastic batteries. And someone will be successful. I don't know who, but someone will, if you look 20 years down the road.
I've got the same opinion regarding the raw materials. We think that we should develop the recycling technologies for the batteries to recover these metals. For example, cobalt. Maybe after a few years, somebody will develop new types of batteries where the cobalt will be substituted by another type. I don't know. Or like I said before, maybe the technologies of hydrogen can be a substitution for some cars. Yeah.
Is that any, because there's always the chemistry, the resources, and things like that, but also we need to deal with some market regulations, some kind of other things which create some barriers. And do you think some of them can be overcome by some kind of regulations, or maybe we should create some regulations, or maybe we can do something about that?
Well, specifically for energy storage, I mean, we really have to develop to much smarter metering systems. We already briefly touched upon. Price of electricity is basically going to vary from morning to midday to evening, overnight, and there are probably going to be significant differences in prices. Somebody has to follow that. I mean, as an individual user, you're also going to be an individual producer of electricity. So, I mean, I want to be able to follow when did I produce what, when did I use what. And somehow I would like to manage myself, that I want to supply when it suits me and I want to buy when it suits me. Today, I mean, that's chaos. There are no systems. And at a certain moment in time, I think the regulator has to stand up and come up with boundaries in which probably very innovative business models are going to emerge. Also, I mean, it's not energy storage, and the future of that is not only physical things. It's also about new business models. I mean, people will come up with very smart ideas to make money in just managing that whole thing.
Okay. Yep.
Being a power system guy, basically, I can only support what I say, because today we have a ridiculous situation. A grid company is not allowed to own storage. So even if they can solve a grid problem with storage cheaper than building grid, they are not allowed to do it. I would say basically all countries in Europe. That's one hurdle we have to lift. On the business models, that also, unfortunately today, most countries in Europe have different business models on the market, electricity, which is also an embarrassing fact. From a technological standpoint, there is no problem to measure everything and to aggregate everything. And so the technology is there to create all kinds of business models, but we are today hampered by the differences in market models for the electricity.
Yeah, any comment?
What could I add to my colleagues? I think that the law regulations are very important, and standardization as well for the batteries, for the technologies, the low chargers. I'm
always saying to my students, you need to realize that in the new world and this new behavior, you can even deal with the situation when you come to the fuel station and you don't need to spend few minutes to fuel your car, but it's going to be completely different. You need to have a ready-to-go battery. You need to have the possibility to switch it, but you need the standard one. You need to deal with quality, and so on, so on, so on. That create a completely different behavior, different citizen in the city. So we have a little bit of time, so it's time for final message. I would like to ask you about the future applications of storage. Challenges that forecast and business models need to create and capture this value of energy storage in the few words. What's the biggest challenge, you think?
From my point of view, I think the biggest challenge is going to be how do we manage complexity of storage? Because we are going to enter into completely different models. Like we said, different owners of systems. We move to a situation where we're going to be all an individual producer and an individual user of power. And that's an enormous market potential for battery players, for material players, but also for, I don't know, many companies in our society. But at the same time, it's very complex to get that regulated. And from my point of view, that's the biggest challenge to overcome.
In a little different context, similar message is awareness. I think it's a complete lack of awareness what kind of system we could have in the future. And this also goes back to skills. We could have a special separate session on skills. We are lacking skills, actually, for this.
From my point of view, the big challenge is the standardization. Like I said, the standardization of the processes, the standardization of the infrastructure, for example, the power charging, this direction. Okay, so as I started, I'm going to finish with the thing. There's a lot to do. We're going to have a job for the next, I think, 20 years. And just to organize everything, just to make it working. But it doesn't mean we don't do anything because it's significantly changing. We're facing new problems. We are trying to deal with that from the scientific point of view and also from the business and industry and also from the European Union, for example, organizing EBA and other initiatives. Sure. So because the time is running, so let me thank to my noble speakers and thank you audience for this moment of the Impact Conference. Thank you so much.
Welcome.